All right. Oh, there's Judy. Hi, welcome everybody. Hi, Judy. So this is, there you go. Hi, Judy. We just started the recording and I was just about to say that this is Journey Conversation, let's see, for installment 4 of Secrets, which is chapter 21 to 27. And also the final installment of Journey Proverbs, which is chapters 102 to the end, which is 112. So we've now heard from 112 different people with their own little proverbs. So this conversation is open to any of that or anything else. It's really the secrets that's very, very challenging. Did anyone get a chance to read? Listen.
Yeah.
What about Proverbs? Anybody looked at Proverbs? Let's do that first, if anybody has anything on that. We certainly heard from some interesting people, including Al Capone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also a bunch of biblical characters, actually. Daniel, St. Matthew the Apostle, Ruth, St. Mark the Evangelist, St. Luke the Evangelist. So that was interesting. And of course, Mother Teresa and Mary Magdalene too. So yeah. So that's been nice as a sort of a conditioning practice to kind of get used to hearing from the unseen. No separation. It's all about no separation. All right, Judy, I know you're itching to get on to secrets. I think we're going to have a conversation today that's going to be full of questions and wonderings and no answers. So it's perfectly fine. There's a lot of very deep stuff being expressed in the simplest terms imaginable. And so, okay, guys, go ahead.
No idea.
Go ahead, Irene.
No idea.
I know, but that's okay because we're not supposed to think about it. I'm getting such a sort of an expansive feeling about what I'm a part of, you know, as I read this. So go ahead, Judy.
Well, one of the things that really struck me when I first read through it was the whole issue of God being heartless. I couldn't figure that out. How could God be heartless?
Well, remember, this is a story that's being told about the beginning and how the beginning moved forward to where we are now, which is what, 100 billion years or something? I don't know the number, but something crazy like. Hi, Lorraine.
Hi, morning, everyone. Just
morning.
trying to get myself
Good.
awake
Take
here.
your time. Take your time. So Judy was just saying that she's kind of a little bit stuck on the idea of God being heartless. But so anyway, it began as pure energy.
Yeah.
Right. And so I am the original nameless one is pure energy.
Right.
So
so then you wouldn't classify that as God?
Well, everything is inside God. Even the heartless ones are inside God. I think we're really bumping up against our conditioning and notions of what God is and what love is. That's for me also, you know, Judy. So it's a good question. Just hang out with it, you know.
Yeah, well, Lorraine and I were talking yesterday, and I was just yet curious, maybe the I am energy would not be before he was potential. Like, I have a touch of laryngitis, so bear with me.
Take your time.
Before he was potential energy, and then he became kinetic energy with the thought. So I was thinking, well, maybe prior to having that thought, he was this pure energy, which is there. I mean, and of course the other problem is that we think linearly, you know, and so in order for us to maybe talk about this, I'm thinking in lineal terms. And I was just wondering, maybe the I am energy would not yet be considered, quote, our definition of God until it became kinetic energy in a sense.
Yeah, that certainly sounds fair. I mean, when you say our definition of God, I kind of stopped. It was like, does anybody define God? We've been given something, whether from our backgrounds, whether it's been at a church or whatever religion we've been in, there's been some definition given. Judaism has one, Buddhism, everybody has one.
Just want to know if
So I think what this is
Can't
doing.
get my picture.
you can
What's
or
that?
can't.
Cannot get my picture
Let me
today.
see it.
Oh, so what we're being asked to do is really clean
Yeah.
up
Upside down,
preconceived notions
upside down.
all preconceived notions of what we have thought is God or whatever. So actually, let's start at the very beginning, because in the first chapter, this is the first point in this book, chapter 21, when the author reveals their identity.
Right.
And it's explained as the I am, the original nameless one.
If you go down to number 4, he talks about the sentences, together we form what has become known as God. That's why I thought the I am energy was not defined as God yet until the Godheads were formed.
Possibly, yeah, that sounds,
It does say, yeah, together. So he begins by telling us, I am the original nameless one. When stillness of potential awareness first became aware of itself, I am energy was born. And remember, we talked about that. First, you had to become aware. You had to become aware and be able to think about itself. And the more it thought about itself, well, the thoughts even could progress. I mean, thinking about yourself can manifest progressively in different ways, right? As the thinking gets more complex. But then I rose from potential to manifest. I have never spoken in this manner before. So he went from the dormant to the active, or the creator, the creative source of energy. I've always allowed my highly developed creations to speak on my behalf, but now it is time for me to speak for myself, because I am the only one that has perspective of being there from the beginning. So Judy, that I am the original nameless one was the first thought, right? And then he said, I am part of a collective I am energy. I created more Godheads through extension.
Yeah.
And the Godheads, we are told, are heartless. And that's where what? How can God be heartless? God is pure love, right? And I thought, well, do I equate love with a heart? But the Godheads were heartless. So that's kind of his second thought. And so I reached out to Jacques and I said, Jacques, help me here. How can God be heartless? What am I not understanding? So I'm going to share what Jacques wrote to me, because this comes from him, not me, although we're all the one brain. Okay, so I think that a Godhead is some kind of prototype of God's plan extended out in space to prepare the field for a creative process to occur. It has no decision power at that time. When a super soul is ready, it is matched to a Godhead to initiate a personal creative endeavor. Jesus was a super soul, right? But within the set of parameters of the Godhead, the creator has free will within limited parameters. We also follow this path. So that helped me. That made a little bit of sense, that the Godheads were ready. They were prototypes, and they were, how does he put it, extended into space to prepare a field. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that we can see the thinking or the awareness of itself gets progressive. But then, like Judy pointed out, we tend to think linear, this could have happened all at once, in the explosion, or right. So like, we can't get too concerned about it. But for Judy and I, it was kind of a revelation. Together we form what has become known as God. What we think of as God. It's the I am energy with the Godheads. Unify. It's all part of God. Like you said, Christina, there's nothing outside of God. We're all within God. And I think it points out that somewhere in here. But that helped me see that there's a progression of creating, there's an evolution of creation, even way back there.
Maybe a little bit on that idea is ego's vision of God is certainly got, unkind, because ego's always saying, how come God is allowing blah, blah to happen? So from the ego standpoint or perspective, God is certainly not a nice guy, or and not nice. And so much of this material is about what do I want to say? Instead of there being God and ego, it'll all be one, instead of the as we see it now. We see ourselves as two. We see ourselves as people and God somewhere else. And it will eventually be, as we understand who ourselves are, that it is just one. So it's not God and us. So I would think from the ego standpoint, God is certainly not nice to allow blah, blah,
God, ego thinks it is God. We make it a God in a sense that when we don't know better, when me, myself, and I is the God. But just to finish off that little bit, it says, together we form what has become known as God. It goes on to say, so that's the I am energy and the Godheads. Now together they become God. And we have created everything from the temporary to the eternal. All things exist within us. Entire universes exist within us. Multiple universes exist within us. Nothing exists outside of us. And that was your point to us, Krista.
So Judy, sorry, Lorraine, you're breaking up a little bit. Can you repeat the last sentence?
No, go ahead.
No, repeat what you said. You were breaking up.
Well, in my last sentence was that nothing exists outside of us.
Right.
That's the I am collective, right, and the Godheads forming God. And that was your point to Judy when we were talking about heartless Godheads, but you said nothing can exist outside of God.
Yeah,
and that's
all of everything is inside of God. So that's an important point to remember from a practical standpoint, because the mind is going to question and separate out in order to understand.
Absolutely.
And that's why we have spent years, most of us, bringing our hearts and minds together into wholeheartedness. When received wholeheartedly, these 7 chapters of this installment, either by reading them or listening to them, they just are received and assimilated as a whole. Even the way it is written linearly, because there was a progression. And in this particular installment, I am doesn't use the phrase, your tiny little brains, but it has been used before.
It has.
And so every time we get into our tiny little brains, we begin to question and, push back, but how can it be? And that says that there. And And honestly, I went through this section a couple of times, including this morning, and it is an amazingly clear explanation. If we read it, chapter 21 to 27, it just takes you on this journey. It's almost like a story, you know, it says this began, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. And it takes you all the way through to you being a child of the super soul, which is really beautiful. And that's where I want to be with it all. So let's look at chapter 22 and let's see if there are more. But actually, Judy, I wanted to ask you first. I'm sorry, I almost forgot. How is it feeling now? You came in like kind of buzzing with how can Godheads not have hearts?
Well, Lorraine and I were talking. I called her up right away, and we talked last night. So we kind of, well, we kind of straightened a few things out. So I was feeling pretty good, but I just wanted to run what we thought, you know,
Originally.
and I think you know the way it is, the way it stands, and the way the explanations that we got. I think I'm good with that. I can accept all that.
Okay. So, I mean, Lorraine's absolutely right. This is evolution from the very beginning. And I don't think it's been told in such a way before.
No.
I think
No.
it's the full story, well, the fullest story that's ever been told in the simplest words possible. I have heard and absorbed pieces of this story in far more complex language from different sources, people who've received other material over the last several years, so many different stories, including, you know, involving galactic beings, and even quantum science has a story, and they argue about certain parts of that story. There is no completion of the story. So this appears to give a complete story in very simple words. So
It is the true story of creation. We are told that. I don't know if it's in the introduction or one of the early, this is the true story of creation. And I know that, like you say, if I get my tiny brain and try to analyze things, I can make it more complex, but it definitely resonates me, and I'm loving everything I do read.
And I think that's really important, that it resonates, and that the word truth means it is resonating with you. It resonates with me. There are many things I don't understand with my mind, and that's okay. I'm holding the whole thing and allowing it to float around in my system, and know that if there is something that needs to land, it will. Also, if there is something that changes the way I live today, that will land too. And the thing for me is, as I said earlier, it just makes me feel so belonging to something vast, you know? So I'll check in with Kevin if you have any questions right now. But what I hope to do is spend a few minutes on each chapter. We've done the first chapter, so we can just follow the progression, which would be really fun for us as well as to record it. Kevin, anything?
Yeah, that's it's one of the most beautiful things I've been with. The first chapter on the flow, you know, I mentioned to you before about Genesis, whatever that is, but I could really feel the flow of the creative process, the starting, the dormant phase, and it linked into the Tai Chi and Qigong, and in the things that I've been practicing, been drawn to over the last 6 years on another level. And it's like, you know, I could really see this, you know, I'm not saying this kind of wording, and there's it's left me with something. It's still sitting there, just that first chapter, and you know, the whole unfinished planets. There's still.
Right.
It took me right into another level of awareness that I thought, wow, yeah, there's and it's beyond Star Trek. I mean, Star Trek, you know, really. Forget Star Trek was just really is a story, but this, because of the work I've done with Tai Chi and Qigong and the Feldenkrais, this work that I've been doing, is incredibly linked to this healing process. You know, Feldenkrais talks about being at this awareness of, not so much awareness of what we say or think, the words, but being, he says, being aware of what we, being what, you know, what we're doing, opens the door for so many kind of possibilities, you know, in terms of healing. So I have to say, yeah, I'm not just, I have reading the rest of it, I'm trying to find the right time where I can be present to it, not distracted from it. But that first reading that I did through that, when you sent that, left me with some real joyous feeling. And the fact that I didn't take it, you know, the fact that we're God making, not machines, but we're here to make more of God, kind of hit something in me. So that's.
Thank you. No, that's great. That's really beautiful. Yeah, God, love, synonymous, and love, as we have known, always grows. You know, there is no finiteness to love, it's infinite, and that's what we're here. Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, chapter 22 is about the vastness of God, and then begins to talk about moving forward, creating not from as prototypes, but from seed form. And that was the first time I think the seed form of energy was introduced, produces a soul, a micro droplet of God. And they were collections of micro droplets to begin with. These souls were to form types of super souls. So, and then it talks about needing governing bodies. So were there any?
Oh my God, this blew me away.
Go ahead.
Number 5.
Yeah.
It was an aha moment, I think, for both Judy and I. Oh my God, we are God's creating hearts from the harvested. Okay, so let's do number 5. God grown from seed form is different from a God prototype.
Yeah.
Or a super soul of God. God prototypes are not created with a heart. This is why micro droplets of seeds are so crucial, because that's what we are. 1 micro droplet equals a soul. Somewhere it's in here. This is how the heart of God is developed. It grows from experience in form and is strengthened every time God's nature is chosen over our programming. So Judy, you got to help me here. So what did we come up with? God couldn't choose. God doesn't have a choice. His only nature, he's love. He's pure love. So he created a program. He created us with a program. And every time we don't choose it, we choose our true essence, we grow a little bit more of our light, our aura. That is harvested to give the Godheads heart. So we are little mini gods helping him do what he can't do, because he can't make choices. He made this prototype somehow without a heart, so he had to refine it along the way with his thinking and develop this grand scheme.
Mm-hmm. And that's what Earth is about.
That's
what
Earth
is for. That's what life is for. That's what's in front of you right now is for.
It's serving love.
Create more love.
Yeah.
That's all it's for. But we have heard that and learned it and supposedly practiced and lived it since the beginning of whoever began their journey forward on the spiritual path, whether it was the Course in Miracles 40 years ago, 50 years, whatever, there is nothing new here. There is nothing new here in that sense. Yeah, this will appeal to a lot of people who maybe have poo-pooed this work, maybe who need more scientific knowledge. But that's what's so clever about it. It's simple language and so many ways into it. Think about it. There are 18 books in the
Exactly.
series, you know?
Yeah, like
So
it just
this-
triggers something in my brain that I've
Yeah.
kind of, oh, it's articulated in a new way. But
Right.
so the Course of Miracles, of course, is always choose again, choose again,
Choose to
choose
love,
again.
return
Are
to
you
love,
are
choose
you
to
going
love.
with the program? Are you going with the ego? Or are we calling Holy Spirit to help
Exactly.
us choose again? And we even needed that help because we couldn't
Exactly.
see Holy Spirit yet as our higher self. I still didn't get the oneness yet until, you know, I still was thinking and figuring that out in separation,
Mhm.
separated thinking. It was only the wholeheartedness, the union, having that experience, you know, and it took me a couple of reads of A Course of Love. And then I kept doing the 40 days over and over and over again till
Yeah.
finally.
The truth is, we know that any one of these texts can take you all the way.
Exactly.
All the way. A Course in
It
Miracles
can.
Absolutely,
has all of that
absolutely.
in there. All
Yeah.
of that in there about your
Yeah.
brother, it's you, there is no
Yeah.
separation. All of it in a very practical way. Irene, go ahead.
Well, the religion that I was brought up in, you know, was born into, taught, as I understand, and I'm quite sure I'm correct here, taught that judgment was loving and that this was a judging God, and that's how we were loved through judgment. So it always separated me from God because God was, you know, judging everything. And so that's where I, at least in this lifetime, got off the path. And I'm sure previous lifetimes as well, because this religion's been around a good while. And it's something that I have to pay attention to all of the time. Well, much of the time,
Yeah.
that I don't fall into that kind of love, the
Right.
judging love, because those two words don't actually go together. Only in, you know, only in what we've been taught over eons of time do the words judging and love fit together,
Mhm, mhm.
you know. So
Yeah.
we're learning they don't fit together, and we are undoing it.
Mhm. I'd like to meet the person who wouldn't say they're struggling with the same things you do, Irene. I would really love to meet that person, you know, because I do. And, you know, it's just human. And you know, we're all growing in our ability to notice it before it comes out as a word or action or whatever and causes, you know, harm or hurt in the world. So that's, or to ourselves, more than anything, to ourselves, really.
Yes.
We're all learning how, that is the journey home to self-love and self-compassion. So
Mhm.
thanks for bringing that up, Irene. And the truth is, when we're talking here about the way religion has taken ancient truths and molded it for their purposes, which in the when, what is it, Emperor Constantine started Christianity some 200-300 years after Jesus had left the planet. I mean, seriously, it was entirely for control and power and money and all the rest of it. The Roman Catholic Church was created. And I grew up in the same way, Irene. You know, it was all about High Church of England at the time, and, you know, rights and wrongs, and, you know, the hellfire and brimstone, all that stuff, you know. So
The going to hell stuff.
yeah, exactly. And in
The
some
old
ways,
programming,
I know,
program.
and in some ways, I don't, kind of gives me a little tummy twitch at this time of year when so many children are deciding if they are going to be naughty or nice. You know what I mean? I know it's fun, but having an elf on the shelf watching you is an American thing I never encountered before. And I'm thinking, oh my God, way to go, creating guilt in little children, you know,
Yeah.
and fear.
Yeah.
Because, you know, anyway, that's just me. It's like, oh,
But no, I remember someone, I don't know who it was, whether it was a comedian or something. He says, you know, there was Mel Gibson did that film, Passion of the Christ. There were people, adults taking their children to see that film, and then afterwards waving the finger that said, look what Jesus had to do for you. That programming, I had that from an early age and stuff. And there was an Irish comedian at the time when I was growing up, and he used to just brilliantly cover off this unconsciousness, and it's amazing. And the other thing I was just going to say was this judgment thing. But the big thing for me with the judgment thing is that when I started doing this work, I was really struggling, like everyone is still doing, judgment. And it was something happened. I won't go into the whole thing, but I didn't have what they call, this is about 3 years ago, I did not have healthy discernment. I did not have healthy discernment. And so it really helped me understanding that difference between healthy discernment and judgment, because I was beating myself up about I should be able to try and forgive this, get in my arms embracing someone. And actually that opened some kind of space for me around difficult scenarios where this discernment, healthy discernment situations where no, this was not a safe person. No, not a judge.
Yeah, and that's programming too, because we're given a bunch of shoulds. So what you're speaking of, Kevin, is giving it back to ourselves the freedom to just choose from neutrality. We don't have to judge something just because we're not going to choose that. It's choice, and then that famous line from A Course of Love. Do you judge peas because you don't like them? No, we discern that we don't like peas, so we don't eat them. We don't judge them. So,
And I think last week we did bring up that point that we're most hardest on ourselves in judgment.
Oh.
We judge ourselves. It's exactly what you're saying, Kevin.
Right.
To accept ourselves. Yeah.
Exactly. Because of all the shoulds and the programming. So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go on to chapter 23, which talks about after aeons of creations, aeons and aeons and aeons of creations of more and more Godheads, all of which were heartless prototypes. They needed a governing body. So this was the next part of the strategy, to conduct day-to-day operations of wide-scale soul harvesting and to produce creations that have auras to shed so that more hearts could be created. That was the one thing I couldn't give them, says I am. So we're into the hearts being grown. Now this was interesting to me. I'd never heard of the Malachi.
Oh,
Malachi, a governing body known as the Malachi. So it's a collection of super souls. This governing body, 12th dimensional beings. I love that. How fun is that? I mean, we can't even conceive of a fourth dimension. So how can our brains possibly understand all of this, really?
I'll give it a go.
And I love that the way it talks about these beings that include Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, and all of the archangels, and they each have wickedly strong super souls, so I love that.
It's also a great explanation of how we make the hearts for the Godheads, because that last sentence in number 1 says, and the second was to produce creations that could have auras to shed, which you did say, so that all of God prototypes could have hearts. This was the one thing I couldn't give them.
Yeah.
This is right, and it goes on for further explanation, and even talking about red shirting. The Godheads were red shirted for that first cycle of creation.
That's at the end of that chapter,
because they weren't ready yet. They didn't get the hearts yet, right?
Yeah.
So Judy and I were discussing, well, does a 1 cell amoeba have a heart? And I said, well, anything that lives and breathes, even the air, has divine essence, has the I am energy. It's what we're created. So they must have had some kind of tiny spirit or essence that they could harvest off a little bit of energy to create hearts for the Godheads. We were discussing probably silly questions like evolution
I don't know.
starting in the first creation, right? Well, what was it like way back in the
I don't
first
know.
creation cycle, right? But
You see,
but
I have no-
already, yeah, if the Godheads were red-shirted, is because they didn't have their hearts yet. And the first cycle of evolution or whatever already begun to be harvested.
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if any energy was being harvested from single and multi-cell. I really don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
what does it
eons
say?
of creation later is when, you know, humanoid forms began to appear on the planet, you know, and then it took eons more before there was anything in the way of an aura to be. So I don't know. It's
Yeah.
fun to play with it, but bottom line, this talks about when the next Big Bang occurred, all existing prototype Godheads were equipped with functioning hearts. So they must have in some way done that. But I don't know when that next Big Bang was they're talking about. You know?
No, and I get caught up in the linear thinking, like these
Okay.
happened in a evolution went this step, but we don't really know, as Judy
don't
pointed
know.
out, did this all happen at once in an explosion? And
Well,
who knows? Like, I mean, we
it
can't
happened the way the story is being told, which is
told.
an evolution. But they remember that these guys are multidimensional beings. So what does it mean? You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
What does it even mean? I actually came across this video the other day. It's about 20 minutes. I haven't even finished watching it yet, but in a very simple way, this person is explaining with a lot of visuals what the dimensions are, all the way from 1 to 11. I don't know why he doesn't talk 12, but he's talking 1 to 11, and he's melding a spiritual sense of it with mathematics. So maybe when I finish it, and if I feel it's something that is consistent or worth sharing, I'll do that, but I'm not quite sure yet.
I'd be interested in that.
Okay, Kevin. All right. So let's go on to the next chapter, unless anyone has a question. We're on 24 and we have 4 to go.
Yeah, just something crossed up in my mind that I heard. It may be not relevant or something, but I was listening to Eckhart Tolle about a year ago, and he mentioned that where he spoke about it, obviously beautifully, about there's been 5 extinctions of the creative process on this planet, where 80% of the life forms have been destroyed. We were heading for a 6th one, he was saying, right?
We were heading for what?
But he said we've been heading for another one, the way we've been behaving
I see.
this planet.
Yeah.
But he said that the creative process, you know, nature has a way of dealing with these things. This was before this COVID thing came out. I was listening to him, and he said that it might come up with, maybe because of population increase, it might come up with lack of sperm count, heated conditions, whatever he said, he doesn't know. But the message he gave, which was really beautiful, I was taken really by surprise, was it, and he said something about, we'll always be here, and but he said that something about the fact that each time that the life form takes on a kind of almost like increasing complexity, and but somehow that this creative process is going, where he said it's going the other way now. Instead of being out there, like you've got the Tony Robbins school of, didn't say Tony Robbins, but you've got this giant and out there projecting, creating. There's almost like a pullback, return process going on. But you're always linking in all that with what you just mentioned. It just came up.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Who wants to talk about this chapter where it talks about who your grandparents are? It says here, I'm speaking for the first time to what are essentially my grandchildren. Your parents are the super souls. They were the ones who created you by way of a microdroplet seed. And then it goes on to explain how that happens during their reproductive cycle, which is every 250,000 years.
that because we wouldn't know how to proceed without like a male and a female, right? But it's not explained, and it's what it is. And then the thing I wondered too says there hasn't been a reproduction cycle in 200,000 years, and there won't be one before the next freeze. And somewhere it freeze comes up twice in this installment. Freeze is
That's the dormant period, right?
the dormant period, right? So I'm wondering, is that our ice age? Is it? And that's the suspended animation. I think we referred to that when Kevin talked about, the other planets. And
Right.
so that was just a question that occurred to me, but it's not relevant to really know
Well,
it
I
at
think
this. But
it is relevant. And
Is it?
what came up when you said that, Lorraine, is that it's not like the Ice Age. It's the story they told of, remember, it's multidimensional. So for us, assuming we are here, it's that Fifth Avenue shopping trip. You won't know anything happened. A new cycle has started.
Right.
That's what it is. That was described, I think, in the last installment or the one before.
Yes.
About
No, we
the
won't
freeze.
know it exactly.
We
but-
won't know it. Yeah. It's
But
not
if God is multidimensional, which he is, like the evolution, I mean, those of us that freeze to death are experiencing it on one level or in one dimension as everything else that I don't know. No, I'm getting myself into trouble here. No, it's all good.
okay. I love this. I mean, it's blowing our minds, which is a good thing, right? Breathe into our hearts. Okay, melt all those sharp little pointy crystals and questions and judgments and what ifs, and just drop into the heart.
But I do love this particular chapter because it's bringing it really to the personal again. And
Absolutely.
I know that Jesus is my parent, although I've seen him as my brother, how we've been instructed through, ACIM, ACOL. And
So Jesus is your parent?
I'm pretty positive.
Okay.
Hey,
Not
we're
Buddha
talking-
or Muhammad or it's
Also,
interesting. I just want to say quickly that when I went looking for an image for this chapter, I was so excited to find this one because in this listing of the three super souls, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, I always felt like, what about Shiva? And so I decided to put him in there.
There, I saw that.
And I think this is actually a perfect example of how the maybe the experience or what's present for the receiver plays into the actual words that are used, So I'm guessing I'll have to ask Rick. I haven't thought of asking him, but I will when I talk with him. But so anyway, so go ahead, Kevin. You were trying to say something, or did someone have? I thought I heard you say something.
no, just what I was saying, but sort of funny. But no, I heard once just something funny. Paul Ferrini, someone I've been learning from for years. He said something very, very interesting once. He just out of the blue, he said something because all his work is around the metaphorical child, healing and Christ consciousness. But he said something. He said that he thought Lao Tzu was the greatest teacher as far as he was concerned. He had all these books around Christ consciousness. It's just something funny to say out of the blue. But I also most of these books there is the influence there of the Chung. That there you can see it. So there's I'm saying it's not just
I think
comment.
we're back to truth is truth is truth, and it's going to show up wherever and be resonant, where you see it, and it shows up all the time, in nature and books and each other, and that's great. So, anything else on this chapter?
No, but could I just back up
Please, yes.
to dimension? And I knew I had this, I just didn't know I had it sitting in my lap because I'm probably going to use it as a reminder.
Mhm.
So in our clarification of terms, dimension is levels that demonstrate an amount of love and how much it is able to express.
Mhm.
The higher the dimension, the lower the resistance to love, removing the blocks, of course. The lower the dimension, the higher the resistance, right? We're in a low dimension. At 3, our resistance is fairly high to choosing love over the program or even knowing the difference, right? 3rd dimension, height, weight, and length occupying space and under the law of gravity. Fourth dimension, awareness of unseen entities and dimensions, which we've moved into. Fifth dimension, the embodiment of the divine in form. And remember, it did tell us in one of the chapters that we animate our programming right now, but in the next dimension, we will animate our spirit, the spirit.
Exactly. We will,
Yeah.
God will actually be expressed in form for the first time ever.
That's why everybody, that's why they're all watching and trying to help us to get there.
And all these
and then-
communities talk about 5D. So thanks for bringing that in. That's awesome.
And well, the 6th to 9th, and this is the last one, degrees of loss of self, little s, usually not seen in the 3rd dimension. So that only goes to the 9th, Christine, but we have that right there. And that was
that's
helpful.
great.
Yeah, I'll
In
put it.
clarification of terms. What
Yes.
chapter is that in book 2, Lorraine?
Clara, it is chapter
yeah.
3.
Yeah.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. That's the only chapter I did not record because I couldn't bear to read a dictionary.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. But I do refer to it often because I'll say, well, I come up against something, I'll say, well, what does Journey say about it? In their clarification of
good,
terms, right? Okay.
That's really good. Awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so let's go on to chapter 25. Did God create fear? I love this chapter.
Every one of them was mind-blowing.
So, God has been described as love, unconditional love. What exactly is God made of? It is love, it is intelligence, it is awareness, it is creative. But God is also a bit mischievous. I know you Americans pronounce it mischievous, but it's actually mischievous, okay? In order to strengthen itself, it had to create ways to do this. So free will was one way, but then they had to create an umbrella that all free will choices would fall under. So yes, God had to create fear. Who else would create it? If there is only God, then God had to create everything, including its opposite, its shadow. God is love and God has a shadow. And the shadow strengthens that which casts the shadow, mainly through suffering. More on this later. So the shadow has purpose, deep and very, very important purpose. And it's a lifetime of learning for us, for me, certainly, to face the shadow, to go there, to run there when it comes, because that's how I become greater light.
It's beautiful. I love that. That just hearing that word, it really tickled me. Mischievous. I was just really feeling into it. Yeah, I have some fun again with that word. Because sometimes they're left in the back, but actually, being mischievous, I've seen.
There's a sense of humor, yeah, absolutely.
There's been some fun attached to it.
Yeah.
I love that, and the best things I've done have been around as a bit of mischievousness related to even the trouble I've got into sometimes. The mischievousness, I look back on it, and I won't go into it, but I can look back on those, and they're part of me, and thank you for those. That mischievousness, was beautiful. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because it is a playground. It really is a playground. Lorraine, go ahead.
Well, it's a little trick, but it harkens back to what I was trying to explain right at the outset, that he had to create. First of all, he created fear. So I thought, I should have known, but anyway, I never questioned where it came from. I always grouped it with the ego, but it doesn't matter. So he created fear, and then Judy and we were discussing. Oh my God. So he's played this little trick on us in that now he had to program us so that there was a choice, because by choosing not the program, but the divine essence of who we are, choosing love, every time we chose that, we were growing the soul, we were growing the aura, so that he could harvest the hearts for the Godheads to get them going. He missed a step, but he came up with a plan. I know how I'm going to do it. And so it's dealing with our shadow all the time. But again, Christine, it goes back to, there's a purpose. We have a purpose. We are creating, we are part of this co-creation of experience and being. God's shared his being with us, but it's all part of a plan that's going somewhere, if we ever get to the 12th dimension, right? Like,
And
I've got
going
my
some-
tickets booked.
Cool. Excellent, Kevin. We're right behind you. But it's like also experimental, because we have
Yes,
this
we're an
imagining that God is an all-knowing, omniscient, omnipresent, whatever. What we're seeing is that this is all an experiment, and we are
yes.
part of it. So imagine the conundrum of free will and knowing it has to go in a particular direction to grow. I mean, put those two together and you can see the conundrum of
Yes,
creation.
And the joke's on us.
Right.
And but at least he had to put parameters in place so that we had to operate with, and we could never separate. We could never become thank God, like we could never
Right.
become separate or not part of God,
And
outside of it.
Yeah, all this insight. Exactly, Lorraine. And here's the thing, my understanding, listening
So-
to a lot of the woo-woo things, is that Earth and humanity was the first time there was free will. All these other galactic civilizations and there was a way of being. And that's why Earth is so sought after, which book 1 told us about in great depth, of Journey, about how this is a place everyone wants to come here, and we're just waiting for the experiment to work, and you guys are part of it. And, we want to come and play in this playground, because the whole notion of having free will is I don't want to say unique, but it kind of is, from my understanding, in the multiverse.
And yes, and Christine, if I can just interject into this, the Proverbs in that, in the last batch, Anne Richards, right, to the guy that was the front for Black Sabbath, showing the diversity of the play. They've all lived out one of their cycle, and I found that very interesting, the diversity. Some were politicians, some of them were from different cultures, again, right? So that how we play everything out is so unique and so individual, but it's all part of the game, or it's all part of, So Proverbs even gives us this diverse way of what it means to have been a human being and how we played our part. Some of those Proverbs are regrets. Don't do what I did. Or they're just simply, I still don't have it figured out. Or there's all kinds of little nuggets.
They've all been gifts to expand our notion of life, basically. Irene, go ahead.
Okay, what came to me was when you said the word shadow, automatically the word judgment came in there. And there's no judgment in that which God created. It just is. For instance, I'm sitting in a room here and there's light coming in a window and it's bouncing, it's going back to a wall. Okay, so the light that's coming in the window is going. Now, if I stand between the window and the wall, I'm going to create a shadow. And how to get rid of the shadow is I just step away. So
into the light.
So what happens, I think, is, with that, like you mentioned the word shadow, and right away, the idea of a judgment came in. And so if we could just see words without judgment, without the word judgment attached to them. That things that God created, period. And we decided to judge it.
But now that we know God created fear, it's okay in a way that
could you take the word judgment off fear?
Yeah,
Just-
absolutely.
If
Absolutely.
we can just take the word judgment
Absolutely.
and throw it out the window, just
Yeah.
do something with it.
Yeah, that's
But
quite
every-
beautiful.
Yes, we can. Each one of us can, and we've been
Can.
working on it for our lifetimes, I'm
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because that shadow for when I just initially when I was doing this work, I had this thing, the shadow. It was only until about recently, about a year ago, I realized that I could see that it actually it has all it has all those potentials in it, and that actually as a child, God as a child, almost I can see God as a child, um, you know, uh, just creating this shadow, this kind of ego definition to be here. Yeah, just to
Yeah.
be here. A young
Yes.
child makes it, and yeah. Go on.
I mean, that's the whole, that's the sort of the paradox. Again, there's that conundrum of we're here to produce more love. The way we produce more love is to have a form, we're human, and situations facing us that give us the opportunity to choose. Free
Choose.
will to choose. So of course there's going to be shadow. If you don't have a form, Irene's description of the sun shining in, and if she stands there, there's a shadow. Well, if you didn't have a form, there would be no shadow. You'd just be the light, which is 12th dimensional whatever beings, okay? But no, we are at the moment 3 moving into 4 and hopefully becoming 5-dimensional beings, which is embodying love. There may be more options there about whether we have form or not, but right now we have form. So it's purposeful. It's purposeful, you know? There can't be light in form without shadow. There can't be light in form without shadow.
It's very interesting as I was just as I was journeying with that really lovely image with Irene just gave. I really could sense into that, and that somehow that the play of this, I was just seeing into that there's this balance between almost like what's my real nature and this. Because if you have ego, there's the ego definition that's completely, worthless or too better than that person. It can't connect, can it, with that universal creativity, that universal energy? But there's almost like this there's this almost, can I say, beautifulness with this shadow that it's helping us create that later in life. Yeah,
It is beautiful. There's
It
that,
is.
it's a term that I used in some work I was doing, ecstatic darkness, the ecstatic darkness, the beautiful, it's just, those, we don't have the language to describe those kinds of things that you're talking about. But I just want to finish this part now, but quickly just saying also that to remember that in science, darkness is nothing. It has no properties. It is the absence of light. So while God created shadow, it is created in such a way as a tool to strengthen love, to grow love. But it isn't real. And that's what A Course in Miracles has been trying to teach us in the Course of Love. That's how I look at it. But scientifically speaking, darkness is nothing because you cannot measure it. It is the absence of light. So just like fear is one way to feel into it, is that it's the absence of love. You can't measure fear. It has its purpose. But anyway, so I want to move us on.
I'm
the
going to
next
have to go.
chapter.
I'm going to have
Okay.
to go.
Can
Okay.
everybody? Oh, thanks, Judy.
Yeah.
Please do if you have to go. Anyone else
Yeah.
got to go? Otherwise, I'd like to just continue for a few minutes to finish the next chapter. Where were we? I've lost my.
We were at chapter 25, and did we
2 more.
complete that?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, 'cause we were talking about the shadow.
Yeah.
So we were still on 1. So we can move
Oh,
on,
I thought we'd
Christine.
gone
and
all the way down to.
we hadn't talked about the micro droplet seeds so much.
Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad.
Well, yes, we have. We've
Yes.
kind of covered it in that, the potential payoff would even be greater, that we have this purpose and we are here to create love. That
Right.
just blows my mind, gives me a whole new sense of understanding my being. Anyway, so we could move to 26.
Chapter 26, are you an I am energy? I wrote that question, but let's see what it has to say. Lorraine, would you like to?
I'm trying to I don't see where I've made any notes on this one. Let me get my own identity.
Archangels. It
The
mentions
original I am developed.
Super soul identities include all archangels. Oh, I know what the first paragraph is really important for me. I wrote down in my notes that there is a sequence of creation, and that's all described in that first paragraph. And I'm just going to read it.
Right.
My own identity, the original I am identity, developed first. Super soul identities developed second. Remember that these include all archangels. And I'll interject here that these are 12th dimensional beings. The third development was additional I am identities through Godheads after hearts were inserted. And the fourth development was form infused microdroplet seeds, which came from asexual supersouls. This is you. So notice that form is introduced with you, with me, with the human in the fourth stage. That's when the fun really started.
Yeah, that I had actually, now I see I've numbered it. And what else it kind of revealed to me was that Godheads were not second as I had them in my mind. I had them in a, and they're, we went to super souls, and I thought they came after the Godhead. So that Godhead isn't, it is in a storage tank somewhere, or is waiting, he to brush it aside, as John
Probably an
pointed out.
idea of
It's
God. It's ideas.
God.
All of these were ideas. I mean, there's nothing manifests without the thought of God. Right?
Exactly.
So
we're a thought. Everything's a thought of God. Yeah.
So the second stage, which includes the super souls, developed second, and these include all archangels, and that's when they put together the governing body called the Malachi, which are all archangels.
Yeah.
That I want to slot that in there too. And then the third development was additional I am identities through Godheads. And the Godheads are the ones that have these playgrounds. We in the last installment, we heard that Godheads work symbiotically, and they have their own playgrounds for their creations, but they work off of each other. They collaborate like scientists do. And that's when we had those lovely, cute little examples of how, here you could have, what a zebra looks like, but over there could be a zebra head on a grizzly bear. All of that is because that's a different Godhead's way of playing, so if you can think it, I remember it said, if you can think it, it exists somewhere.
Yeah.
So, okay.
It's just on that thing that I've been, just recent discovery for me is that as you just said, Christine, about thinking, I was a bit funny about but what I discovered recently, particularly the Feldenkrais were connected to this, is that sometimes if you've got an injury or you've got a bad back or you can't move, to actually part of their process is to think through how you would do that movement, as without actually physically doing it.
Yes.
And by doing it, I think what I'm sensing is that when we come together like this on one level, we're creating, it's like a neural and hormonal pathway, almost early, as he said, early stages of what we're doing, just being together and creating this. We wouldn't be talking about this 20 years ago, right? So it's beautiful. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, we're definitely, and again, it's giving and receiving as one. There are new pathways, new elements created within ourselves, and we're anchoring something in the field also, because we are the field. There is no separation between us. Our atoms are flowing into each other's atoms and through the entire field. So every droplet of what we're talking about here is being anchored and going out into the field. So thank you for that, Kevin. And I just want to say that what you're describing, if I take it down to the simplest terms, we are I am struggling to touch into feeling myself as pure energy. Energy that chooses to be in this form, in this moment right now in front of me. But pure flowing energy, which is linked to the atom thing. But that's really what Feldenkrais and all these things are about. It's about seeing and feeling into ourselves as energy. And that's where we're moving with this fifth dimensional stuff that we're talking about. So.
I think you did mention that, Kevin, you were feeling more flow kind of thing. And Course of Love talks about it as spaciousness, that spaciousness, to be that spaciousness. But I can say the same thing.
But amazing,
Christina,
yeah,
that,
yeah, but it's like, I always thought you had to make some movement initially, physical, but actually there's a whole world of just, you could be paralyzed and making these movements within the mind initially that can be doing. The miraculous is absolutely possible. The miraculous is absolutely possible.
Well, and star athletes train that way sometimes when they have injuries and they can't actually do the thing. They go through mental routines. They do that. So it's sort of like established in a way in that sense. Sorry, Lorraine, go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say the other point I would make is that, if we go top down, I am energy, everything that God creates everything by becoming everything it creates. So everything is a reflection. Now it's coming down and we have this choice, but we reflect our super soul. If I've decided it's Jesus, I think that's my parent. We are a reflection because we can't be anything else because we're part of God. We are that. So
Yeah,
I guess I don't know how I tie that in with flow, but it does flow down to us. And can we feel that energy?
Well, being inside God and outside God, I mean, it's like there's no inside and outside, right? It's all this flow. It's all the field. It's all Indra's net of jewels.
It's all part of it.
No, I have to add this here. On Sunday, it was this great important day of the 12/12 portal opening and energies hitting the planet. Now, I know these things and I wait for my experience. Well, my experience on Sunday was pretty amazing. The sun was amazing. I took a picture of it and there was this rainbow radiant rays coming off of it, which was, wow, I had never seen that before. And then later we were out with the grandchildren because Colin's band had a concert and we had to wait before going into the auditorium a half an hour or more. And we were outside and this child, this 8-year-old child, we were outside and she insisted on holding this tree. She was hugging this tree for like 20 minutes or more. And it was frigid cold. The wind was blowing and, I was cold. I had to go back in the car, but she insisted on staying there. And then she told me that the tree told her her name was Flo, Flow. And that she was a gender fluid being. And the tree had insisted that she held on for that length of time and she was happy to do it. This happened on Sunday.
Wow.
I mean, this child is extremely intuitive. Ask her to go put something in the trash can. She can't see it, even though it's right in front of her face. But she has this other presence. Anyway, that was a little digression.
Yeah.
But flow is in the air, Kevin.
Yeah,
Flow,
absolutely.
flow, flow is energy. Yeah, and it's powerful because energy is infinitely powerful, infinitely grows powerful. So I don't want to keep you guys too long. It's 12:12 right now. So I think everything I said is pretty important. I look at the time and these numbers, 12:12, 12:12, here we are, 12:12. So, okay, quickly going on to the rest of this chapter because we have one more chapter. Why do Godheads need hearts? Why do we use harvested material from humans and other humanoid creatures to create hearts for Godheads? Remember that a Godhead is a fully developed member of the God community, and thus it is a creative force. However, Godheads cannot create without a fully functioning heart that pumps love energy.
And
So
that's where we come in. That's our purpose.
that's what the playground of Earth is about.
Mhm.
Yeah. Everything that I am creates is eternal and timeless. It is beyond the constructs of time. But these are needed along with an exhaustive menu of fear-based choices for creative purposes. Therefore, these are part of God too. The temporary and the painful are part of God. We call these tools. All right,
Mm.
one more chapter, chapter 27. I really loved what it said in this chapter. Does God feel pain?
Free-based choices under the umbrella of free will has taken its toll. He tells us he does feel pain.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, even when I was recording this chapter, I felt it. I felt the lifetime of pain, and I felt my own. At one point, I used to make myself wrong for my capacity for pain, physical pain and suffering, emotional pain, to be able to be with people, you know, in such a way that I thought there was something wrong with me, that I was like a voyeur or something. I know I'm not, but it was one of those mental things going on, you know, judging myself that, you know, we've talked about. But then to read that, yeah,
Mm.
God
And
feels pain.
so that's the grief that we hold, and you hold so intensely, Christina, but it's also grace. It has its purpose,
Is
right?
translated exactly to grow more love,
Exactly.
to grow more love,
Grow
because
more
all
love.
of my choices
Yeah.
through those sufferings and pain has been
Yeah.
more love, more love, more love.
And Jesus on the cross was weighted by the pain
Right.
of right from the inception of beingness, right from the beginning. He carried it, that, or felt that pain.
And he was human, because there was a point at which he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?
I have, yeah.
And that's human, you know, that's a human thing. And still to choose for love, that's what strengthens and grows the love.
Yeah.
It's easy to love when love is flowing towards us,
Right.
covering us everywhere.
Exactly.
Where the love is needed is where there is none of that. Where it's either, you know, either neutral, ignoring, or being attacked, you know, being, you know.
Mhm.
So this bit here is, it says, God says, if everything, absolutely everything lives inside God, then what is it like to have things inside of you that are contrary to your own nature? An earthquake, a volcano, a tropical storm, a hurricane. What is it like to have inhumane acts of all types, even full-scale wars within you? I've tolerated it, hoping the end result would be worth the torment, but things are changing. And this is kind of important in there, because God feels our pain. This I am presence is saying, if one of my creations feel pain, I feel it.
I absorb it.
I
He
absorb
says.
it. But then it goes on to say, and it has taken its toll, as you said, Lorraine.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
an adjustment has to be made. Oh my God, what is that adjustment? You know, this is the thing. More on this later.
Mhm.
So
You have been told that you think you are doesn't truly exist, and neither does anything that you are familiar with. This is true because of our version of reality being only things that are eternal. However, it is not true of all the time-based realities, of which there are many. These are partially true because they are strengthening mechanisms for the eternal. They are not to be discounted. And that gave me great comfort
yes.
because of all the, you know, everything's an illusion. It's not real, this
Right,
reality.
right.
But it's partly, I mean, our purpose in it is necessary and needed, and we're having this experience.
Exactly. That's really important point, Lorraine, because
Yeah.
I know there are some people who have discarded earthly life And religions sometimes do that. They say, this is, just temporary
Yeah.
and don't worry about it. You go, you move
Yeah.
on.
Nihilism, nihilism, they've just
That's
doesn't
true. That word,
exist.
they used that
Nihilism.
word, didn't they? In that book?
It's been used often, yeah,
Yeah.
in our journey. It's not that's okay. So if part of I am energy is strengthened, has it changed? If something grows, has it changed? Its fundamental nature hasn't. Or if something has become stronger, doesn't this imply change too? Creative growth is evolution. Evolution is change. So even the timeless and the eternal change too.
Yeah.
Even God, I am changes too. Change part of God. That blew me away too. Because there's no dualism, but we've been told only the eternal is absolute, doesn't change, and it is what it is. But look what
It
we've been
changes. Yeah,
shown.
everything's growing. Everything is expanding. So when you think about A Course of Love, it talks about the expansion. I mean, it really is. Everything is continuously expanding, and in a way that matches the scientists who say that the universe is expanding.
Expanding.
So
Yeah, if we're not growing, we're dying.
right. And love is infinite. And what does infinite mean? It's a forever thing, right? I mean,
Right.
yeah. Well,
So
this has been amazing, guys. Anybody got anything to say? Irene or Kevin?
Yeah, as you say, it's infinite. That was just something that occurred to us. Was that there's a journey into this kingdom, and then there's a journey within. Wow,
yeah, wow.
Yeah, I always feel it's like an infinity loop, as within, so without, as within, so without, as continuously every moment. And that's how we create the new earth. We land the earth of our longing, union and relationship and harmony, and as within, so without, in form.
What just came to mind, the infinity circle that does, and I don't know if you were going like this,
Yeah,
or
inside,
but
I was
that's the
doing it
loop,
inside,
that's what we're
outside,
talking-
yes, but
yeah, okay.
multidimensional means it's a torus field. That's what the torus field is. It's
Field
that-
is, yeah.
the energy field, the torus. Yeah. So that's a whole other
Oh,
conversation. We could have a
yeah.
whole series of amazing
Yeah,
conversations.
but that on just any one of these,
Energy,
they're so amazing. Yeah, and
yeah. But we
Christina,
can bring
I
in
kind
those.
of took over and let us out of it. Go ahead. I just said I kind of took over your role and let us out of it so that I wouldn't talk about it, but I would get us through
Oh,
it.
no. It's just,
Get to the
I think,
finish.
I really feel discussion is great and fine because we're aware we're doing it and not get lost in it. I think it's only becomes an issue or becomes unproductive when we're not aware that we are following these paths. I mean, just like researching the internet is not unproductive. It only gets not that great for us if we lose ourselves in it. But we are
right. So catch
everything has its
yourself in
place.
doing it.
There is nothing outside of love. Discussion is also within love. Irene, please.
Okay, well, quickly, what just popped into my mind, but I thought about it the other day too. When I was young, I was abused. And I always thought it was because I wasn't loved enough. But of late, I realized that it was, I'm gonna say given, that's the wrong word. But anyway, I experienced it as a form of love to forgive it. I experienced the childhood that I had so that I could forgive it. And so that I see love all differently now.
Well, you were choosing love, and that's the choice. Like that's the shot. Yeah.
That it was love, but it wasn't. It was love that I couldn't understand at the time. But now that I see it as a whole different kind of love. And every time any thought of any of these experiences show up in my mind, I forgive them.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
just give them another kind of love,
Right.
and
right.
I forgive them.
And that's so it strengthened you to be the more loving person and forgiving person that you are. And I think that's why I love the Course, the way the Course Miracles talks about everything is love, but it does make the distinction between love being expressed and a call for love being expressed. So the abusers in my life too were calling for love,
Mhm.
Mhm.
calling for love,
And-
which is still love.
And didn't know better at the time. Like that was the only way they could be where
Well,
they
all
were
of us
at,
don't
right?
know better, right? Except what we are in the time. Yeah.
And
I'm not gonna-
I didn't know any better, and I
Right.
didn't know any better at the time.
So it was
Now
all
that, and now that I know
Yeah,
better,
that's true.
and I'm
Yeah, you can do better.
extending a different kind of love to them.
yeah. Okay, guys, I think I'm going to draw this to a close. It's almost an hour and a half. The video will be up. I think this was great. I think a lot of people, well, I have no idea who it's going to reach, but
Oh.
whoever finds Journey and finds Secrets, I think they're going to find this conversation and all of them pretty useful. So as we struggle to express ourselves. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
love you.
Thank you.
And all.
Okay, love
May,
you all.
may the 12th dimension be with you.
May the 12th be with you. But we are in that 12 window.
On the
yeah,
12th,
absolutely.
12th was
12 through the solstice, 21st is a very
Is it?
important
Really?
time. Energetic,
important.
absolutely. Look,
Oh, well,
yeah,
okay.
watch out for my newsletter this Saturday. I say a little bit about it.
Oh, I look forward to it.
Thanks,
Okay, love
everyone.
you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Irene, Kevin,
Bye.
Lorraine.
Bye.
Bye.